Penny is head of the RSPCA Animals in Science Department, which works to achieve the fullest implementation of the 3Rs, with replacement as the principal goal. And robust ethical review of animal use. And she's been with the RSPCA for 28 years, and her main areas of work are reducing and avoiding severe suffering, and supporting ethics committees and animal welfare bodies in all their tasks, including developing a culture of care. She is also Vice President of the UK Institute for Animal Technology and a member of the UK Animal Sentience Committee.
What I'd like to do is think with you about how institutions can set up internal processes to make sure that people are able to communicate in this way and that something will actually happen as a result, sort of building the bridge between recognizing and understanding these feelings and actually doing something about them, making sure that something happens. When I received the list of sort of demographics of who was going to be here, it was really striking that actually most people reported that they had 0 to 5 years of experience working in animal experimentation, and the next popular amount of experience was 6 to 10 years. So although some of you out there have been working in the field for over 20 years, like me, there are quite a few people who are earlier in their careers. So when I talk to you about these institutional processes, in some cases, it might be that these are things you're going to ask for, hopefully using some of Fernando's communication tips, or you might be in a position to set these up or just otherwise support them. So hopefully there will be something for everybody at all stages, and also from a range of different countries, because I can see you're joining us from a lot of different countries too, which is fantastic. So I'm going to talk to you about the importance of establishments properly acknowledging emotional burnout and making sure that there are these communication channels in place. And then I'm going to give you some ideas for initiatives to help prevent and alleviate burnout. And I'm going to base them partly on the sorts of evidence that Aoife presented and that Megan Love Follett has also talked to you about. And also I'm going to base it on my and my colleagues' experiences when we do workshops on compassion fatigue and emotional burnout at establishments. And then for the last part of this talk, I'm going to give you an outline for the kinds of workshops that we do that you can try for yourself. So all the slides I'm about to show you, and also a handout that goes into a lot more detail about how to run a workshop, will be shared with you by Ord. And I hope you find them useful. So I'm just going to briefly touch on the culture of care, because we all know what the culture of care is, but I just wanted to emphasize all of the elements of the culture of care, because this is a very good reason for you to set up or ask for some processes and resources to help you deal with compassion fatigue. So it's really worth remembering that the culture of care is not just about caring for animals, important and vital though that is. It is about how we treat each other and communicate. It's about caring for the 3Rs, caring about the science, caring about the public, being open and transparent, including about the sort of ethical issues that arise too. So the person-to-person, the caring for staff element of the culture of care is a really good reason to push for more consideration around compassion fatigue at your establishment. So the culture of care, as we know, it's all about fostering mutual respect between people with different roles and recognising emotional labour across a whole range of roles. As Aoife explained, everybody can be affected, from scientists, animal technologists, lab animal vets, ethics committee members, people reviewing projects even. All of these can experience emotional labour and compassion fatigue. So I always recommend the 3Rs Collaborative Compassion Fatigue Resiliency resource there. I think it's fantastic. And it also has a very useful sort of a checklist for the primary causes of compassion fatigue, as listed here. And this is also evidenced in a number of different countries, different research fields too. So I think this is a really good sort of starting checklist to think about how to address compassion fatigue. And it actually splits into 3 here in these different colours. So the first area is to do with social support. And as we've heard, this can really come to the fore with respect to people working in animal experimentation, because it can be quite an isolating profession. You can't always tell your family and friends if you've had a bad day, for example, if you've had to kill lots of animals, or if you've been undertaking, or if you've been carrying out a procedure that causes severe suffering, or caring for animals who have. And then the next 3 items on the list relate to animal welfare and 3Rs issues. And I think there's quite a lot we can unpick there to think about whether something can be done about those. The last 2 relating to work relationships and staffing levels and work-life balance can obviously occur in any line of work. But when you combine that with the fact that you can't talk to people about your experiences and the very emotionally conflicting things that you're having to do, it can really be a perfect storm and lead to a lot of stress. So if we have a think about these things one by one, the social and emotional support aspect, obviously it's really important to create this kind of supportive environment where people feel that they can discuss any issues that they're having, with opportunities to do this. And if you look at Fernando's checklist that's also going to be shared with you and posted on the website, there's some really good tips there about how to ensure that people feel able to do this. A key way of doing it also is to run a workshop that enables people to partly respond anonymously and also do small group discussions and plenary discussions. And I'll come to that later. But it's also important that the establishment acknowledges at a high level that emotional labour can be problematic for people working in animal experimentation, and there should be good pathways to institutional support if people need that. Now, many establishments do have mental health first aiders, but that might not be the best approach. For example, if there's a large university where there are a sort of generic or general mental health first aiders in place to help people who could be experiencing stress for any number of reasons, they may not always understand the kind of stresses that people working with animals can experience. They might not be sympathetic to these, and they really might not have the sort of toolkit needed to help these people. So the establishment also needs to make sure not only that in-house support is appropriate, but that also people are able to access good quality information produced by external bodies like the 3Rs Collaborative, and also the UK Institute of Animal Technology helps to support its members if they're suffering from compassion fatigue. And this is an example, a practical example from my own experience of an institution that's addressed this issue. So I actually sit on the Animal Welfare and Ethical Review Body, which is sort of equivalent of Animal Welfare Body or Animal Ethics Committee at the university. And we undertook an exercise to define the university's culture of care. And when you get my slides, you'll be able to click through to a link to a report on this. So we began with a sort of an icebreaker exercise, as in the picture. I won't go into this here, but do take a look. And then collectively, we identified principles that we wanted to set out for the culture of care, thinking about animals, people, the environment, the working environment, and the science. So that was the start. And then we wanted to follow this up. So 2 years later, we held a follow-up workshop in which we asked people working in the animal unit which of these aspects they wanted to focus on. And they chose the animal-human relationship. And we held another workshop. Again, do take a look at the report, and there you can see a word cloud that we did as an icebreaker, just to explore people's feelings about the interactions they had with the animals they cared for. And the list on the left sets out what people wanted to happen as a result of the workshop, what would have really helped them, or what will help them to ensure they know that the relationships they have with animals are respected and to be supported if they struggle. And you can see the list there. They wanted this to be acknowledged in induction materials. They wanted a buddy system, a discussion group, which was easy to set out, formal top-level recognition of emotional labour, and open communication about this. So moving on to the next three issues that have been identified by the 3Rs Collaborative: higher severity, desire for more enrichment, and physical euthanasia methods. So higher severity has been recognised for a long time as affecting not only animals, obviously, but affecting humans, whether these are scientists, committee members, animal technologists, or vets. So it can be possible sometimes to reduce severe severity, either down to moderate severity or level 2 in Switzerland, or so that it may still be severe or level 3, but not cause as many harms to animals as before. My organisation's actually produced a roadmap that you can see here, which actually works for all severity levels, not just severe suffering. This is quite a complicated slide, but it shows you how you can use this roadmap to set up a group with input from people with multiple roles, audit procedures to see which ones are causing severe or level 3 severity, why this is, and then to unpick the animal's life experiences, refining these at every stage and applying a sort of marginal gains principle to reduce overall severity. So people will feel better if they've had the opportunity to input into something that has fully explored the potential to refine more and to ensure that this is an ongoing process. And even if the severity is still severe, or if anybody's concerned about severity, it's been reported to us at workshops that people find this easier to deal with if they fully understand the purpose of the research and receive feedback about its outcomes. So this applies more to animal technologists. If they are fully involved in understanding the research and they know what happened, whether it's a publication, whether it's something being brought a step nearer to clinic, or even if the null hypothesis wasn't proven, that does help to deal with emotional labour. And that's something that hopefully people will feel able to ask for and share. Thinking about the desire for more enrichment, an obvious way to deal with that is to show that it's being taken seriously and to explore whether there really are any genuine obstacles to providing more enrichment or any other kind of refinement or better welfare assessment. This graph at the bottom is the outcome from a meeting that we held for lay members towards the end of last year. So sorry, these are lay or independent members of the UK AWERB, although in practice, these are usually attended by people with a variety of roles on the committee. And we held a session looking at whether sometimes committee members feel dismissed if they suggest a refinement, if they see a refinement in the literature or they hear about it at another institution. They can ask to talk about it at the AWERB, but quite often it doesn't go any further. Sometimes people will just say, oh, that won't work, but they don't actually provide proper evidence or justification as to why that won't work. And you can see there that 2/3 of the time, or 2/3 of people rather, felt that this did happen sometimes. A lucky 3 in 10 felt that never happened. But it's really important to make sure that nothing is dismissed out of hand. So there should be pathways to assess and implement new enrichments and other refinements. If it turns out that it won't work, then hopefully that will help to reduce emotional labour, because at least people will feel they've been listened to and it's been tried. And there's a link there to an evaluating environmental enrichment tool that we developed with the Institute for Animal Technology and the UK NC3Rs. So thinking there about physical euthanasia methods and lack of control over methods, I did note that the Swiss regulator is taking the welfare issues with carbon dioxide killing very seriously and is working on alternatives to that, which is good to hear. But of course, this is the problem, that all euthanasia methods do cause a level of pain, suffering, and distress. It's very difficult, even if it's just restraint and a needle stick, which should be mild. There will always be a level of harm to the animal and therefore a level of emotional labour that comes with that, quite apart from the emotional labour that's associated with taking an animal's life, particularly if somebody's become bonded with that animal. And particularly in the UK, one response to moving away from carbon dioxide killing has been moving over to physical methods, such as cervical dislocation. And this has caused issues if it's been done too quickly without adequate engagement and communication so that everybody understands why they're using the method they're being asked to use, and that they can see the animal welfare benefits and they're supported in doing this. So we and Universities Federation for Animal Welfare and the University of Newcastle are actually planning a meeting on this in November. And as part of that, we're going to set out what a good engagement plan would look like to remove or reduce the risk of emotional labour. Also, we question whether allowing people to opt out of physical methods is a good solution, because the more people who opt out, the more pressure that puts on other people to implement those methods. There are sometimes no easy answers when it comes to this sort of issue, but certainly allowing a feeling of control and choice and good communication can help with those sorts of causes of compassion fatigue. And then finally, thinking about staffing and human relationships, this is obviously all about enabling people to communicate without fear of consequences. So it's the sort of psychological safety and self-confidence that Fernando referred to. We know that work-life balance is often an issue for people working with laboratory animals, including animal technologists, not least because it's very difficult to just close the door and walk away at the end of the day. And sometimes this can even impact people at work. So, for example, we were doing a workshop on emotional labour at one institution, and during the discussion, it turns out that animal technologists were disturbed because the animals they were working with were noisy, and they could still hear the animals when they were having their breaks. And just simply moving the break area away to somewhere where they could just have a break, have a bit of space, and not be thinking about the animals all the time, actually help them to properly refresh and have a bit of time in a recovery zone before they went back to work. And of course, any work issue it can be made worse if people can't talk openly outside work. That's why it's so important to ensure that there are platforms and ways of meeting within the establishment. And I'd just like to flag up careful stories here, because these are really good sort of mini plays with discussion that can help to get people's feelings out and help to make sure their needs are met. So just for the rest of this talk, I'm going to show you a template for a 90-minute workshop that you could instigate, run, attend, or ask for at your establishment. We find 90 minutes is a good span of time. It's not too long. You can fit everything in. If you've got animal technologists coming, they can fit it in around their duties. You can make it longer, obviously, by extending the talks or having 2 case study sessions. Case studies are very popular and a very good way of ensuring that people are able to explore issues that are important to them, particularly if you choose case studies that are hypothetical situations but still relevant to the establishment. It might be to do with humane killing techniques or the species you're using or the research fields. So what I will do is just show you some of the slides that we use. There are more in the handout that I've done, and explain how we do the workshop, and hopefully that will enthuse you to do something yourself or to have us in to do a workshop with you. So for the introduction to the workshop, I find that a word cloud is a really good icebreaker, and I'm going to show you a genuine word cloud that I think is very striking. So I use sort of Menti or Slido or some kind of software, and just say, put in 3 words that sum up the feelings that you're struggling with. And this is a genuine one. And I think that's incredibly sad, and it's very difficult to think about people experiencing those sort of feelings. You can see there are a couple of positive ones, like pride, for example. But people are feeling pretty bad, and that actually really helps people to feel that they're in a safe space, and that finally, in some cases, these feelings are going to be acknowledged. And then for the rest of the work, so for the beginning, for the introductory talks, We tend to focus on the tasks of our ethics committee, our AWERB. You could focus it on whichever committee you're working under, or you could focus it on the culture of care itself. But just to give you something to sort of analyse and break down. I won't go into details about the sorts of slides that we do to break that down, but these are examples of the sorts of action points that we ask people to consider, just so that we try to make this into something real. You know, acknowledging these feelings is the first step, but these are things that we say people could do. They could ask how the ethics committee is fulfilling a culture of care function, including specific activities and showing leadership. Because in our experience, often if you ask a committee, do they actively develop and promote a good culture of care? They'll generally say yes. But then when you ask them how, often they're a lot less clear about that. And I think it can be because just the assumption is that if they're doing their job, then the culture of care will just follow naturally, including caring for staff. But it's not always like that. Other things that we suggest is getting it on the agenda. So getting emotional labour, that is, on the agenda. Everybody should be supporting the ethics committee's initiatives, and the committee itself should make sure that there's input from everybody. And of course, it's good to share resources if you come across anything useful, and to tell people if you're struggling. Sometimes actually when we do these workshops, it's the first time that people come forward and say that they're struggling and having problems. So another task for our ethics committee is supporting named persons. So these are the sorts of people who are responsible for overseeing welfare and care, making sure that appropriate information comes into the establishment, making sure that people are trained and competent. So people in those roles and other staff, everybody dealing with animals, about animal welfare, ethical issues and training. So again, I think you can include emotional labour as an ethical issue. If you'd like more information about what this task looks like for the UK AWERB, you can have a look in our new guiding principles on good practice for AWERBs that's we've just produced with the UK Laboratory Animal Science Association. Although it's UK AWERB focused, there's information in there and guidance that's good for people working in any sort of committee, so please take a look. And then the institution could support this via the ethics committee by obviously making sure that everybody has the training and resources that they need to discharge their responsibilities properly. Certainly in the UK, this is not always happening, particularly if people have multiple roles. They could be the named information officer, named training and competency officer, and named animal care and welfare officer, but without any additional training or resource to enable them to do that. Also recognising and addressing emotional labour as part of this task as well, and making sure again that everybody has been involved in making sure that the issue is properly addressed and that all voices are heard. And these are some points that we ask animal ethics committees to consider and individuals to consider. So does the Animal Ethics Committee oversee training and support? They don't have to do the training, they just have to make sure that everybody gets it. Do people feel supported? Are they good communication channels? Are you accessing all the training, CPD, information support and resources that you need? And you really ought to be able to say so if you're not receiving these, or to talk to your ethics committee about this. So going back to the template then, the next thing that we do after that, so we have discussion about that, and then we do case studies. And I'm just going to give you an example here of a case study. I'm not going to read all of this out, but it's just basically you're a junior tech, you've been told that your lab's going to move away from anaesthetic overdose to kill animals, or you could substitute carbon dioxide if that's in place at your establishment, and switching to physical methods. You're told why, everyone else is all right with it, but you are not. It feels really brutal, and you're wondering whether you're a bad animal technician, maybe you're just not up to the job. And we have some questions there to sort of stimulate discussion around all of our case studies. There's a couple of these in the handout. That always generates a lot of important discussion, and it's also important to be able to deal with this discussion too, and help to end it on a positive note. And the presentation that we do at the end of the workshop helps to bring back positivity. If this is needed, it's not always needed. So we talk about feelings, how to recognize if you're having issues, what to do and what not to do. Signpost people to any important either local or central resources to help with this. Go into practical things. Like I think this is kind of common sense, but I think we all needed to be reminded about this sometimes. How to distract yourself, the importance of changing your perception, keeping active, sharing with people. And then we ask 3 essential questions at the end, completely anonymously. We ask people what they do to cope with stress and emotional labour. Sometimes the responses are a bit alarming. They're generally practical, they're generally sensible, and I think it's just helpful to sort of for people to reflect on that. We ask them what they will do differently as a result of the workshop, and usually we have some positive responses to that. And then very importantly, we ask what they would like their employer to do to better support them. That's so important. And again, thinking about Aoife's messaging about agency and Fernando's messaging about following through on commitments, it's really important that something happens. I've just that little picture there, it just comes from an article that describes how people have created sort of shrines and memorials to lab animals. It might be something that people like to do inside a building if they're worried about security, or outside if they'd like somewhere to sit and it looks quite innocuous. But the point is, something concrete really needs to happen. Maybe not literally concrete like that, but something needs to happen as a result. The commitments need to be followed through. So that the clear message there is that it's important for the institution to hear what people are telling them and do it. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for submitting your comments and questions. So I would like to start with the comment and the question. So one attendee wrote, I really want to be true with myself, and I believe that this topic is so important that all the PIs and professors should be here listening. This is like a beautiful fairy tale, but the reality is that we don't have any established way for them to take care about our compassion fatigue. If it's not on paper, people forget about it. No guidance, no control. So assuming it's a lack of culture of care. And a comment from another attendee is, I've been writing human distress into my risk assessment. It doesn't fix the system, but I hope it's a start and shows the animal stuff I care about their well-being. Thank you for this feedback, but I would also like to ask, perhaps, Fernando, can you suggest first steps to change this culture and perhaps improve the culture of care?
Yeah, I would like to touch it directly first, a tool that can work, for example, to really the people who can't communicate what they are feeling it's to write it in the way, as I mentioned into the talk, they can associate what they are feeling with the aim of the group. So I am feeling sad, I am feeling bad, I am feeling unappreciated, and I think that this is relating to the animal welfare and also to the science that comes, because I am not feeling good doing the experiments. In this case, you are depersonalizing, I would say, the discussion, and you are putting everything in the center. You will put the animal and will put the science, and this will be easier to you to express yourself and to really work in the problem, not working how I am feeling, but working how my feeling can really contribute to the experiment, to the science, to the animals, and how we can work together on that. So I would say one strategy would say also to write and to depersonalize and to put animal welfare and good science into the connection of the emotional problem. And related, I would agree that something that is on their own control is, for example, writing material or guidelines, for example, this checklist that we can apply to ourselves. For sure, this will not change the culture of the group or the PI reaction or the cult or the institutional reaction. But if we can start with these guidelines or these with tools in order to show results, maybe or most probably we can convince the people that culture of care in the long term is the solution. So, yeah.
Thanks, Fernando. Yeah. Any other comments from Penny or Eva on this? So first steps to change this culture in the group.
Yeah, I thought that was a great answer from Fernando. I would just add, I think there's a bit more sort of safety in numbers. Previously, compassion fatigue was always thought about with respect to animal technologists. And I fell into the same trap myself, I guess, because I've always tended to work with animal technologists a lot, and I know how hard it can hit. And obviously, they often have to kill large numbers of animals, which is a primary cause of compassion fatigue. But I've also had a lot of scientists attending workshops, and they feel just as strongly. They feel neglected, and of course lab animal vets can too, so I always make sure that I mention all of them. And I think it's important for people with these different roles to look to one another for emotional support, not just sort of stick to people that have the same role as them. And collectively together, I think they can make a much more powerful case to an institution that we all need support here, and it's important for the quality of the science and the reputational risk of the establishment, as well as for our feelings and the culture of care.
Thank you, Penny. So, Eva, you're unmuted. I'm not sure if you would like to comment also.
Yeah, just a small one, that I do think it is important that this comes top down as well as bottom up as well, that there should be institutional pressure to introduce a culture of care. And I think one way of doing that is signing up to the Culture of Care Charter and sort of promoting that within the institutions.
Yeah, thank you. We have signed the Culture of Care Charter in Basel. So if your institution hasn't done this in Switzerland, I would love to hear to bring that forward. So then a second question is, and it also refers to the structure and to the culture in the group, how to overcome hierarchy issues in communication. So the participant said, I have learned that in interprofessional teams, like in science, but also in human medicine, vet medicine, where senior academics work with younger people and persons with different professions, like technicians and caretakers, comparable issues appear. So any ideas how to address this in the group?
I have just a short comment about that. And when we talk about hierarchy, that's true. So in this context, delegation can be a key. Because sometimes the institutions are so big, so multiple backgrounds, multiple stakeholders. So what we can see, for example, in some successful experiences is that when the leader knows who delegate or knows how to delegate the specific task to the people and name the responsible for each task, I would say in front of the others, and really back and empower the people to follow the task or to meet the task. So it is a good sign that also the other people will follow the delegated one. So I would say hierarchy, it's important, and delegation could help us also to overcome this hierarchy and to feel a little bit connected with other people.
Thank you, Fernando. Any other comments on that question?
I could. I was just thinking about the situation in the UK, where a lot has been done to professionalise animal technologists, I've seen in the nearly 30 years that I've been in this field, I've seen their status grow hugely from being, you know, the people who clean the animals out to people whose expertise is taken very seriously. And the people in the named roles, for example, named animal care and welfare officer, have a lot more power, and it's much more difficult to overrule them. They certainly have much more authority. I was also thinking about the cost action, the improved cost action that some of us have been involved in, and that Fernando's been one of the leads on, looking at the scientific and culture of care impact of having laboratory animal staff play more of a role in experimental design and conduct. So I know it's not a quick fix solution, it's not a short solution, but I think that the direction that the professionalization and of people in other roles is taking will help with that eventually.
Thank you. Thank you, Penny. So this is already our last question. How can we overcome the notion that it is unprofessional to bond to our research animals? I had PIs telling me I should never name my animals, or that I should not get sentimental about killing them. Who would like to answer the question? Perhaps Penny?
Yes, sure. Yeah, I don't think it's unprofessional, and I think it's good practice. What comes across as very important to me is that animal technologists do not want, and researchers at all stages as well, don't want to feel that animals' lives are not valuable and that animals' lives have been wasted. We saw that in EFA's data about animal technologists feeling that animals have been killed for no good reason and their lives wasted. And there's a lot going on actually to increase the amount of animals who are rehomed in the UK, possibly following the French model, where there are brokers who will take in lab animals who can be rehomed. I think anything that enables people to demonstrate how much they value animals, whether it's naming them, relating to them, tickling the rats, planting flowers in their memory, or just having pictures of their favourite animals on the wall, will help to overcome that emotional labour. I think it helps to overcome this divide that people feel about this need to be professional on the one hand and to care on the other. I think there's nothing wrong with allowing those to overlap, and that provided the support is in place, it shouldn't cause any problems. It's not unprofessional, and I'd be very worried about somebody that didn't feel anything when they killed an animal. I don't think anybody feels like that, and they shouldn't be working in science if they do.
Agree.
Thank you. Just keep it short, Fernando. We need to close. I'm sorry.
No, empathy is never a problem.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fernando. I think that those are great words that I already have to hand over to Nicole for the closing. And I thank you, Penny, Eva, and Fernando for the great talks and for discussing also those topics with us. So, Nicole.